Good morning, everyone. Will DuPree here in the KXAN live studio. This morning, we're starting off the week with some talk about Texas politics, and to join us today is our very own KXAN political reporter, Prazan, and also joining us here in the studio this morning is Kat Parks. She is the chair of the Hamilton County Republican Party and also is the chair of the Republican Party of Texas, I should get it right, Candidate Recruitment Task Force, which is a new thing for them. We'll be asking about that. But good morning to you both. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Will.
Last week was a big deadline for the not only the Texas Republicans, but also the Democrats with candidate filing happening, that deadline being reached. Maybe, Kat, start us off and talk about how it feels for that deadline to have passed now. How are you guys doing?
Very well. We're almost there. Actually, we're going to have our finalists up on December 19th. So pulling all that together on a statewide basis and feels good. I'm very excited about the list of candidates that we've come up with.
And talk a little bit about what your role in the party is and what you did up until, I guess, getting candidates to sign up.
Absolutely. In January, I was approached by Chairman James Dickey, who's the chairman, of course, of the Republican Party of Texas, and he came to me with a vision to do candidate recruiting on a statewide level that had never been done before. Mm-hmm. What we did was we put together a task force with regional directors from all the metropolitan areas as well as Rio Grande Valley, and we took on a definitive bottom-up approach as opposed to a top-down approach, and we went directly into these communities with these regional directors and identified people who we thought were inspiring, who were great community leaders, and were people who ultimately should be our representatives.
And what was kind of the overall goal? Like, what was the problem you were trying to solve in that process?
I don't know about problem. I think all of us want to have better representation. Mm-hmm. Some things that we had identified within our party, we definitely wanted to see the diversity that exists within our party be better reflected within our candidates, and numbers are showing that we had a great deal of success in doing that.
Like diversity, because that's one of the big arguments that the Democrats make is like the Republican Party is full of white men, right? That you've heard that is a common talking point from them, and so. I mean, did you focus on getting women to run, getting African Americans, Hispanic people to run?
I don't think that we went to focus on them specifically, but what we did was by reaching out to these broad coalition building type groups, and we said, who are your leaders? Who do you want? Who should come forward and represent your community? And what we found was that we have a lot of female candidates, we have African American candidates, we have a ton of Hispanic candidates coming forward, and we were able to put into place resources and tools to encourage them, to invite them, and to teach them what it is they need to do to be ready to join the political process.
And now that you have, the candidates, almost a full list, I mean, give us a heat check on that. Do you feel like this was a successful effort?
Incredibly successful. So we found a candidate for each of our congressional races, which was our primary goal. And then, of course, we had targeted races. We found candidates for all of our targeted races. And then we also moved into some new territories where we haven't had Republicans running in quite a while. And we've identified Republicans for some of those areas as well. So very successful, broad-based effort.
Obviously, one of the big races next year will be the presidential primary. Donald Trump obviously will likely walk away with the primary, but there are 4 other candidates for that. How does the party prepare for that? I mean, is there a favoritism shown towards the president, or do you kind of say, you're all welcome to run, this is how the race will shape up?
Absolutely not. You know, probably the question that I fielded most often when I spoke with any candidate across the board was, do you have a winner picked? Do you have a chosen candidate? And we remain, going into the primary process, we remain 100% neutral. Now, once we come out of that primary process, you know, all bets are off and we're behind our Republican candidate. As you know, of course, Donald Trump certainly has the most name recognition and has broad-based support among Republicans in Texas, however.
Is that just at the presidential level, or are those kind of questions that candidates have at the state house race or or in congressional races? Because there are these, like today I saw the Texas Tribune, the National Democratic Senate Campaign Committee backed MJ Hager, right? So that's that's something that they have to deal with. Is that a common question I think that people have?
Most commonly asked question, yes. And what we do tell them is, as a party, we remain completely neutral. You have access to the same resources, the same information. Now, what we can't control endorsements that may come from high-level officials that may, belong to one party or another. But so what we encourage in that standpoint is we encourage them to go out and get their own endorsements as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another big race is the Senate primary that will be happening for the Republicans as well. Senator John Cornyn up for re-election, but he has 3 challengers in that primary. Again, does that kind of factor into how the race might shape up, that those other Republicans have jumped in the race to potentially face him?
I mean, I think like any race, what you look at is who are they able to reach, and are they able to get their name out in front of voters? Mm-hmm. So certainly Cornyn has a lot of name recognition and has done a lot of work for the party for a very long time. You know, that's going to be what determines what shapes up that race, how those candidates are able to connect with those voters ultimately.
The big picture question, but you know, do you feel like people are signing up to run for office more? I mean, on your side, but also on the Democratic side. Like, is this something that people are doing more than maybe we might think?
100%. We had a 15% increase in candidates that we saw applying across the board. And what I think it is ultimately within the Republican Party is that Donald Trump and his messaging against socialism and things that matter to Texans, that affect Texans in their everyday lives, suddenly people who maybe weren't involved in the political process, maybe they were a regular voter, but had not participated in party politics in the past, you know, they start to look at the situation and say, you know, I was trusting that you all were taking care of things. I'm a little worried now because socialism in Texas doesn't ring. And so that's motivated a lot of people of, you know, of diversity all across the board to step up and run.
That's interesting you say that, because something that, you know, I think local journalists fight, you know, or have to negotiate, you know, people's opinions about journalists, right? Is you know, how much is it nationalized, right? Like the national companies who have the national platforms get have more resources, have more, you know, just power to get the message out there, and we're, you know, we're hyper local. You know, our job is to cover the local market that we're in. But are you seeing that the issues nationally are kind of taking over some of the local issues, you know, like the potholes or the you know, the school boards, or just kind of on a bigger picture? Do you think people care more about the national ones and just like that's why they're signing up?
I think it's driven the initial interest, and then I think they look at where can I make a difference and where can I step in. So we see that a lot. Of course, we recruited all the way, you know, from top of the ticket congressional races. We had a number of open races, and so that generated a lot of interest statewide, all the way down through the constable races, you know. And so absolutely, there's no one who doesn't have an opinion about Donald Trump, for sure.
And I guess since we're on these national issues, like and this week the you know, the House will vote on impeachment. Does that, I mean, how much is that a factor in recruiting candidates? I mean, are people signing up because of the impeachment issue, whether, you know, to defend the president or whatnot?
One of the things that we've seen is the amount of fundraising that has taken place since the impeachment has progressed has gone through the roof.
Really?
And so, yes, people are angry about the impeachment. And in fact, I met with 3 different classes of 8th graders and 3 different ISDs within the last month. And I was there to speak with them about the importance of voting and about having their voice be heard. And one of the questions that I asked all these different classes was, what happens if someone that you have, an elected official, is not performing in office in the way that you like? And they said, impeach them. So, you know, what we see is that they didn't say, come back to the ballot box, bring a better candidate, you know. Right now, this is on everybody's minds. If our 8th graders are talking about this is something that's ringing out all across all of politics.
Do you think that will weigh down the Republican brand in this next election? Just because, you know, there has been, I know, internal discussion from reporting on the Republican Party, but then also, you know, you catch every now and again about how you know, state officials have a concern about President Trump, and whether that's impeachment or just him, you know, his personality. Do you think that will weigh down the Republican Party next year?
Not at all. Yeah. Not at all. I think the impeachment, you know, people are getting behind the president. You know, they see the impeachment as a partisan-driven thing. Initially, Nancy Pelosi had said that it would be only go forward if it were a bipartisan effort, and that it shouldn't do something that would throw shade to the presidency and to the office. And then, of course, now they've been pushed politically by their very leftists to go ahead and pursue that. I think we all know that with the numbers in the House, it's going to go through impeachment, and we need to get it into the Senate so that there can actually be a fair, impartial trial.
One thing that we had talked about, too, was that John Cornyn's campaign had been sending out fundraising alerts about the potential for Beto O'Rourke to jump into the Senate primary on the Democrat side. To see now that he has not filed for his candidacy in that race on the Democrat side, how do you feel about that?
I think Beto O'Rourke is a one-hit wonder. Initially he was riding his skateboard around the Whataburger parking lot and, talking about inclusivity. He had a lot of broad-based messaging that, frankly, a lot of voters and a lot of voters who are uninformed were attracted to. But then when he got into the presidential debates and we started, addressing topics like confiscation of individual firearms, we started talking about using the IRS to punish religious institutions. That's not Texas, and I think Beto O'Rourke has burned his bridges here.
So you think those two issues specifically kind of, when he was looking at could I run again in Texas, though, he's gone too far, so to speak?
He's gone too far.
Oh, okay.
Entirely.
Was he the candidate, though, that the Republicans worried most about? Obviously, they were fundraising off of it, so there was a fear there. Was he the candidate to watch in that race on the Democrat side?
I can't speak to that in terms of, what Cornyn's plans were and what his, what their messaging was that they were getting out.
Are there any Senate candidates on the Democratic side that you all are fearful of, too?
Ooh.
There are not any that I'm afraid of.
Okay.
No, I mean, I think what you have to look at is, in spite of the massive amounts of money that poured into Beto's campaign, it was unheard of dollar amounts, we still held all of our statewide Republican seats in 2018. And so even though it piqued a lot of interest there, what it also did was it awakened a sleeping giant from a lot of Republicans who may have been asleep at the switch and thinking that things were taken care of. Well, now we see those same people coming up and saying, how can I get involved to help with campaigns? This doesn't fly with me. How can I even run for office for the first time for people who haven't been involved before?
How many, on that issue, there's a lot of discussion about, how Republican is Texas now, right? Because Ted Cruz won by less than 3 points. I mean, from the party perspective, I mean, do you feel like the Democrats are making ground and that you have to do things that are new and innovative to counteract that?
I think we can do a better job with helping our people with messaging who are out there. When I look at Republican, what I see is personal liberty, personal freedom, and frankly, people who would like to have government out of the way so they can run their families and run their businesses the way that they would like to. Texas believes in a strong economy, which is anathema to the Democrats' centralized message. And I think when you look especially at the candidates that we have coming forward, for example, HG 114, Luisa Del Rosal, she is an all-star entrepreneur. I mean, she is an inspiring woman, and we need to let our great candidates like that take forward our message about who we are, connect with our voters, and help get out our Republican message.
So when you talk about messaging, and that's kind of the room for improvement, right, after 2018, is it emphasizing things more, or is it let's not talk about this is not a winning issue for us, and how does that go about?
I think, frankly, it's being honest about playing to your strengths, about what you are, who you are, and what you have to offer. We have another candidate down, HD 132. Angelica Garcia just recently received Governor Abbott's endorsement. This is a woman who owns an international company. She's an entrepreneur. She's created a nonprofit that addresses human trafficking and infant mortality rates. This is an inspiring person. This is a person that we'd like to see represent us. That's really, I guess I want to be careful in saying it's about the right messaging. No, it's about getting the right people out there, and I think that we've done that.
Well, so much of political, campaigning is the personal stories. I mean, that's not a Republican or Democrat thing. I mean, people say, this person has a good story, they should run for office. And so that's, I guess, your job is to find those people with good stories.
And good principles.
Yeah.
And one other thing, too, we want to talk about, I mean, there is going to be a pretty consequential race for majority in the Texas House of Representatives. The Democrats are putting a lot of money into trying to take back the House and take the majority in that. How do you prepare for that situation? Because last year, they gained some seats. I mean, they were able to flip some Republican seats and gain those for the Democrats. How do you respond to that?
I think I've heard Chairman Dickey talk about, honestly, how, we had some candidates who really didn't campaign fully, and we had some candidates who didn't think that their campaigns were problems, so we're actually out helping other people campaign. And so, we've taken a step back, we've reevaluated as an entire party, and we've looked at what do we need to do to get you resources, what do we need to do to help you get out there and connect voters, and everyone needs to take your races seriously. No one can sort of rest on their laurels and have this happen. That's fair.
Yeah, and is it hard to find candidates, or harder to find candidates who want to do Texas House as opposed to Congress or Senate? Like, do people want to go to the big ones, quote unquote, or do they?
I think it would depend on what issues their focus is on.
Yeah.
So back to one of your earlier questions about, are we all talking about national issues, or are we talking about potholes? Obviously people who have a strong emphasis on border issues a lot of times are drawn to those congressional seats, whereas people who realistically see a lot of things that need to happen within their districts and their communities are willing to start at a lower level where we need a lot of help in Texas.
Yeah. So here in Central Texas, there in 2018, Democrats beat several Republicans in our area. Tallarico, Busey, Goodwin, and Zwiener. I know you all are targeting those four as kind of the win back seats. What do you think is the message to voters on like how to sway those districts in the Austin suburbs?
Okay, and so this is where you keep coming back to the idea of messaging. What you have to realize is that I'm not a professional politico. I'm a grassroots activist who has done this because I really believe in it, okay? So in terms of messaging, for me, what's important is getting the right person who puts the right focus on the right issues, who has the solutions to problems. 52, so HG 52. Lucio Valdez, we're putting up. He's a 33-year Army veteran. He's an outstanding candidate. He's the right candidate for that district. HG 47, we have a phenomenal slate. 5 different Republicans are running against in Zwiener for that. We've got Jennifer Fleck, who's an attorney, has been a local activist involved in many local issues. Justin Berry, who's a former Austin police officer. Don Zimmerman, former city councilman. These are great candidates that are coming forward, that are shaping up, that care about the district, that care about the changes, that care about the things they've seen that are perhaps not being done as well, and that they can improve the situation.
Well, Kat, we want to say thank you so much for joining us this morning, and Bill for coming in with the conversation, asking some really good questions and talking about the race. Is there anything that you all want to touch on before we wrap up our live stream this morning?
I think the big thing that I would like to put out is I would just like to say, we acknowledge that there are a lot of people who are dissatisfied with people that might be in office, or for people who might have been sitting in office for 30 plus years or something like that. Please don't take that and decide to remove yourself from the political process. That makes it all the more important that when this is the situation, you need to get involved in the political process. Put yourself out there, and if you can do a better job or you have something to bring to the table, please come talk to us at the Republican Party of Texas.
What is, just on a larger issue, not really a partisan thing, but when you are looking for those good stories or people, those good characters in your community, what are the big when you go, you should run, right? Yeah. Or you should, what is their biggest holdup usually in recruiting candidates? Is it just like they don't like politics? They feel like it's too dirty, or they have family issues, or what?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think probably the biggest thing is that a lot of times people who have not been involved politically, maybe they're they're obviously very successful in their personal lives and whatever, their business, their chosen career, their community, volunteerism is, but they don't necessarily understand the political process. And that's where we have just climbed mountains in terms of making resources available to them. In fact, we did 33 campaign schools around the state where we trained 1,400 potential candidates and campaign activists. And so putting some of those things out there so that people know how they can go about it and do it.
Interesting. That is very interesting. Well, again, if you are just joining us, we had Kat Parks with the Hamilton County Republican Party. She's the chair there, as well as the chair of the Republican Party of Texas is Candidate Recruitment Task Force, which is new this year. And sitting right there next to her is our KXAN political reporter. You've seen him around many a times, Phil Prazan. But both of you, thanks so much for this conversation. And if you are looking for kind of the other side of the debate, we had a conversation last week with a member of the Texas Democrats who talked about this very same issue, candidates filing for races and preparing for the primary next year. Again, the important thing is to vote. That's March 30th, 2020, so get out there and do that. Both of you, Kat and Phil, thanks so much again for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all for watching, and hope you have a great Monday. See you later.